guess this is basically proof that we survived the first day. So, yay, first day's done. Today we did an introductory lesson, and it actually went better than we had expected. However, we did run into a few issues regarding timing and explanation. And so one of the critiques that we got back is that we need to break our explanation down into smaller steps. We were thinking that the more steps, probably the more complicated it becomes, but I can see how it actually makes more sense in hindsight to do it in smaller, simpler steps in order to alleviate some of our work and have less questions asked. As it was, it worked. The kids seemed to be really engaged. They were actually doing a lot more detail than we had anticipated. And yeah, it worked good overall. It's just there is some definite room for improvement there. We had a little bit of time today to snoop around in the classroom and have a look at some things that our teacher is doing. And one of the things that she does is Classroom Dojo. And this is something I've had a little bit of exposure with. However, at the time, I really wasn't that enthralled by it. Actually getting to see it in action today with students rather than just observing it as a academic exercise, I guess, I can actually really see the purpose behind it. The students were interested in getting their points. The way that she does it is at the end of the day, there's a student who's a helper who actually assigns points as she's speaking to them. And it worked really well. The kids were paying attention, making sure they got their points. They were interested in who got points. They knew if they weren't going to get them, why they weren't going to get them, and there really wasn't any need for explanation there. So overall, I can see how actually it is probably a better program than I initially thought. We'll have to see how that goes as we continue. Part of our lesson plan involved the students coming up and introducing their partners, and there's a couple of students that we really weren't sure whether or not they would be able to. Even our teacher was not concerned but questioned whether or not the students would be able to. Both of those students actually got up and did a very good job, and when we discussed at the end in our post-conference, it was kind of discussed that probably that was partially because they'd been able to see other students do it and were more comfortable with it. Also, there was the aspect of it was only in their little group. It wasn't for an external group. By that point, both Carly and I had done our own, and there was several groups had gone, and the one student in particular who our teacher was most concerned about actually got up and did a really good job. He was clear, he was well spoken, said the proper words, proper descriptions, and so yeah, it went really well in the end. One thing that we really need to work on is our timing of issues. We had way more planned than we could use. I guess that's a good thing in the long run because we weren't necessarily struggling to try and extend our lesson. However, at the end of the day, we were doing our lesson rate at the end of the day, and our teacher has a definite routine set up, and we really stressed that because we were overly long. There was some actual extra interruptions in our time. We were actually broken up by an author who came in to speak to the students, which was really interesting, and the students seemed to enjoy it. She talked about how long it took her to get a book published and the struggles she went through in that. The students seemed to pay attention good and seemed to enjoy it. However, that happened right in the middle of our lesson. We also had half of the grade have to go and take a math exam in the middle of our introductory lesson. And so it was somewhat broken up. So in the future, I think we're going to try and look for blocks of time that are not right after lunch, as it seemed that's when there was lots of interruptions and other stuff going on in the school, which caused us to have to be a little more flexible than we necessarily would have preferred to be in our very first lesson. Other than that, I think overall it went well. Students were engaged. We have some good artifacts out of it that we're going to attempt to do something with. And if that works out, we'll show that to everybody. If it doesn't, we'll pretend it never happened and never speak of it again. Yeah. Well, all in all, a good day, I think.